think the topic that we've picked is a follow-on to a conversation that we started last week, which was, managing your business during a crisis. We left out all of the financial pieces last week and left them for this block of time. And we had more people show up last week, which just reconfirms the feeling that I've had all along, is that people are afraid to handle their financials, and we're going to need, we're going to need to do, a better job in getting people comfortable with that. But just by way of introduction, I think everybody knows me or knows of me. I'm here at HAYVN a lot. I work for the Connecticut Small Business Development Center. We are a jointly funded program between the Federal Small Business Administration, as well as the state of Connecticut. And in many parts, my colleagues work in different Yukon offices throughout the state. So we offer free to you counseling and advisory services in starting and building your business. You can reach out. I'll put my contact information at the end if that's of interest. So, we took out all the sort of soft and cushy strategic pieces of managing through a crisis, and what we're left with is the financial tools. And I'm going to get into them a little bit here, and I'm hoping that this gives you a sense or maybe some ideas of things to think about if you're looking at your P&L for the past couple months. And obviously very few businesses are doing what they had expected to. So I'm hoping that you'll think of this as some tools and tricks and different analyses to look at. I do think it's a time to be diving in a little more deeply. And I'm here for Q&A if by way of follow-up things come up that you want help with. So number one, crisis rules of engagement with regard to your financials is cash is king. And this is a phrase that I think was on business school bingo, because it was the answer to so many of the questions that came up in our case studies that we were learning. And it is even more critical when you're in a crisis, to hoard your cash, figure out ways to access more cash, anything that you've put away for a rainy day. How do we protect and augment that? I'll spend a little bit of time with that. It's also time to assess and reevaluate, just as people have been looking at different ways to pivot, different ways to think about their business and how, this particular COVID crisis has impacted them. It's really time to sit down as you decide to take some steps forward and figure out what's working, what's not working. And hopefully the downturn has created a little room to be able to find the time to do some financial analysis that you may have been putting off, in other times. And I would say that there's a lot of support in the community to help you do this. If it's something that you want to do but don't have the skills to do, that's what we're here for. Another rule, number 3, is super important. It goes against a lot of people's gut instincts, but don't hide the bad news. Like, don't not do the analysis because you don't want to know the answer. You're much stronger and you're going to be able to make better decisions if you have all the news right in front of you. And then number 4 on the list is to take care of yourself. These are not easy times. You're going to be having to make some big decisions one way or the other. And the best way to make good decisions in a crisis is to make sure that you are taken care of, that you're eating and sleeping and things like that. So that's always part of any conversations about that. Now, with regard to the type of assessments that we would recommend, that I would recommend, I've highlighted 5. There are numerous. So to the extent that your business is something a little more specific, there can be other ways to look at this, other lenses. But the key things that we want to look at on a granular basis are a profitability review, an inventory review, cash management, cash flow budget, and then debt management. And I'm going to spend a little bit of time going through these in the next couple slides. So one thing to look at, this is just a checklist of types of costs that you have. And again, with the goal of really creating a wholesome assessment of where your business is right now. I think part of that is creating a wholesome assessment of the cost that you have inherent in your business. And going from the left side of the screen to the right, there's some direct costs in whatever your business is, raw material, cost of goods, the people that you have, over to sales, marketing, traveling, how you're actually marketing your product. There's some admin that's just inherent, whether you're working in your office or not, your phone, your internet, any membership fees, any insurance that you're paying on a monthly basis. Then people costs, which is usually pretty significant, the salary you're paying yourself, the salary you're paying for your freelancers and your team. And then some of the overhead or capacity costs on the right. So rent, heat, electricity, things like that. So make sure that you're thinking when you're looking at, analyzing your finances going forward, that we're really taking a holistic look at, at the cost of running your business on a month-by-month basis. Now, when we review our profitability, this is just, basic profit loss kind of statement in concept. And I'll walk through it quickly and then talk about how we think about it. So, starting with your sales price at the top, this is either your retail price or your net sales price, depending on whether you have a commission built into that, but your sales. And then your cost of sales. So you want to think about your, tangible cost of goods or materials that are part of your product, cost of processing them, your transportation costs, any time consumed with the production of your goods or services. And you subtract that from your sales and you come up with your gross profit. And what we look at is sort of your gross profit just in a dollar figure, but then divided by sales to look at your gross profit margin. And what we try and then look at is we take out some indirect costs of running your business. So think about your sales, marketing, salaries, your overhead, rent, utilities, some of those costs that were on the right side of the prior screen. Subtract those out, you get your net profit. So when I think about this and the kind of work that I've been doing with some of my clients, and this is going to tie into a slide later, but we want to figure out where you're making the most money in your business and where you're making the least. So we look at this kind of analysis, looking heavily at that gross profit on a product by product basis. And it's an important assessment because in times of crisis where you're trying to sort of squeak the most profit out of what your operating business already is, you want to focus on the ones that are more profitable rather than less. So this is a key analysis that we can do. Now, as part of that, and sort of tying into the next, is the cost of holding inventory can really put a drain on your cash situation. And here we've created some different strategies and things to think about with regard to really managing your inventory in a smart, tight way. And I think sort of the language I'm using throughout each of these topics that I think is consistent with crisis financial management generally is like really honing down into understanding the financials behind all of the decisions that you're making. So some inventory management strategies, and obviously all of these won't apply to each of your businesses. Some businesses inherently have a whole lot more inventory. Some inventory is quick selling, some is long term. So take what's relevant here as it applies to your business. But reducing the number of product variants is a sort of key, easy strategy. Bring down your inventory by cutting your SKUs. That way you can just focus on managing your inventory to produce this smaller number. And obviously this ties to the prior conversation because we want to be focusing on the most profitable product segments. One of the things that some of my food clients have been hearing recently is that Whole Foods is doing this. And in each product segment that they have, they're trying to only deal with a handful of suppliers. And while they may have had 7 different suppliers for a certain product, they're cutting that down to 2 or 3, which is really unfortunate for some of the smaller players, but you can understand why they're doing it. It's the time, it's the inventory, and it's all the management that comes along with that. So next is reducing the volume. So how can we really predict more carefully and estimate our capacity needs, and then reduce our inventory accordingly. You are both minimizing your cost of storage, and you are aligning better the amount that you have on hand to the amount you need, rather than prepaying for amounts that you're not going to need immediately and then having to pay to store them. So the next two, reducing your prep time or distribution time. So really just more made to order, like how can we cycle through our inventory and turn it into dollars more quickly. Reduce your order sizes, so purchasing less inventory, whereas something that we have always advocated is sort of understanding the breakpoints in making bulk purchases in easier times. With the uncertainty we have now currently, buying less inventory is going to probably be a better de-risking strategy, unless the costs are prohibitive. Reducing your purchase prices through negotiation. I think that's a thread line you're going to see through this conversation, is where can we look at our cost structure and better negotiate that particular line item. And if we can add up some negotiations of each of the key pieces, that hits your bottom line in a net positive way. Clear the inventory you already have. So is there a way to sell the existing inventory, or if you have outdated inventory that's just sitting there, is a way to convert that to cash? Let's do it. The next two are really an analysis of production rather than purchasing. So doing the assessment of what you should be buying versus building yourself. And in this current environment, taking a fresh look at that and making the right decision. And then finally, sort of to tie this all together, and some of our other slides, improving information flow is another through line through this conversation. Improving and assessing your predictions about sales, purchases, and production. You just want to take a fine-tooth comb to looking at all of the different pieces of your business and how they impact the bottom line. So all of the inventory management strategies are designed to increase your cash. Now, cash management strategies is, there are a couple different elements of that. So when we look at the people who owe you money, how can we increase our cash situation looking at that element? And here's some items to think about. Can you shorten your terms? Can you digitally invoice so people are inclined to pay you more quickly? Can you incent your clients to pay you more quickly, either through a cash discount for immediate payments or by introducing an interest payment for overdue receivables? So, another simple idea is to improve your reminder procedures. Can you automate that? Can you make that something that sort of nudges people in a friendly, on-brand kind of way to pay you because you're a small business too? On the other side, for your creditors, how do we extend your terms of payment? Is there a way to make installment agreements with anybody who you currently owe to? And then, of course, at the same, level, reducing costs and spending where you can. Inventory, I think we've covered that on the prior slide. Capital that may be tied up in assets that you have. There may be a way to take loans against those assets just to save for a rainy day and have in the bank. There's an option of perhaps selling an asset. And, lastly, in this category is leasing any of your equipment, inventory, or cars. To the extent that you need to buy something new, the idea of leasing it instead may make more sense in this environment. In the loan category, if you already have a line of credit or a loan with a bank, that may be a relationship where you can increase the amount that they'll allow for you. If you've been a good client so far and have good credit, that should be something that they'll consider. And also in this environment, it does make sense to ask if you can negotiate extensions on the loans that you do have outstanding. Now, in terms of cash flow budgeting, and tying this back to the idea of cash being king, we're trying to conserve it and manage it the best way we can, is the idea of looking at your cash flow budget, and that may be even more important than looking at your P&L. In good times, there's generally enough excess to make it through challenging small periods. But in a time of crisis, I think the cash flow statement and cash flow budgeting may be the most important tool. And on this slide and the next slide, I've laid out a pretty simple spreadsheet rubric that has you itemizing all of the amount of money that you're going to be expending or paying out on this page, and notating who it's to, the amount, when it's due, have there been any delays, when we think we're going to be getting this. And it lets you, although I can't see it on my screen because I have faces looking at me, but on the right side you can see, you know, weeks 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay. Then, yeah, so there's a payments page for this kind of rubric, and then there's pay out. And so this is things that you would be paying out, the prior pages, payments coming into you, and layering them against each other so that you can see, looking 1 week, 2 week, 3 weeks, 4 weeks out, and do this onto the future, how we can align the payments that are coming into us with the payouts that we're going to have to be making, and really looking at that on a granular weekly basis. Another way to assess and analyze your financial position is to look at the debt that you have outstanding. And this is something that I know can be stressful, but putting it all on one page, and whether these are short-term or long-term types of loans that you have, making sure that everything that you currently owe is on one page, with a sense of the amount, the rate, the term, any collateral that they'd be taking, and whether this is urgent or needs to be paid. And this can go all the way from outstanding credit lines, construction loans, car loans, any insurance payments that need to be made, payments to your lawyers, accountants, and then any taxes or personal debt. If you can just put it all on one page, and sometimes it makes sense to have contact information on the right-hand side, and we can figure out, like, okay, if we can't pay everybody, how do we make the best decision about what this should look like? So the last, oh, I don't know where this went. Hang on a second. Okay, let me get to where I was. Sorry about that. So I think the last slide I had here was about taking care of yourself. Make sure to eat well, sleep well, exercise, take a breath, lean on your community. There are a lot of people here to help through this. And by way of that, I wanted to make sure you had my contact information. Feel free to email or call anytime. If you'd like to register for the kind of advisory services that we do, the sign up is right on our website in the middle of the page. So with that, I'm going to stop my share and hopefully get back to seeing some faces.